Hey guys, thanks for checking into another episode of Jack's Mechanics. Today I'm just going to basically show you how to set timing on an engine. This is cam timing or valve timing, depending on where you're from, then you may have different terminology. I'm not going to really go in depth on how to strip this car. This is a Datsun Sirion. It's just a little 1 litre. So I'll show you quickly how I'm going to do it, but because your car will be similar, but the main reason and purpose for this video is going to be behind this timing cover and how to set cam timing. So here we have the timing cover, and I'll just turn the light on, try to make it, get rid of some of the shadows. We have obviously the drive belts with the water pump there, power steering pump, aircon down the bottom there, and main crankshaft pulley down the bottom in the middle there. So basically all of those belts are going to need to come off to give access behind this cover. As you can see, that water pump pulley is blocking access to the timing cover. So the first thing that you want to do, if you see that, you need to loosen those bolts on the front of the water pump pulley. While it's all tight and tensioned up, you need to basically crack them loose, so that way you can get them undone. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to remove the power steering belt just on its little bracket there. I'm going to remove the aircon belt, and the alternator and the water pump belt is all the same. So we've got 3 belts on this thing. So we'll pull those belts off, and then the timing cover is pretty straightforward. Just like you've got your little 10 mil headed bolts here, some more down the side, and one on the dipstick right there. If I can get you focused in properly, right there. Some on that side, and then a little plug here. So basically I'll strip that apart and I'll show you exactly what to do. So I've just been tearing into this. It's been like 15 minutes, pretty much got all the top part apart, and the belts and that. But unfortunately these older model cars don't actually have like a plastic guard liner. It's all chassis and BS. So that's going to make things a heap of fun. This is the balancer bolt. We need to take that bolt out. Something that you probably want to check is whether your car needs special service tools to like lock the crankshaft. So you would lock it, take the bolt out to stop the crank from spinning. Same with the cams. Some cars have special service tools, not this old thing, but yeah, just a bit frustrating about this. So I'm going to set us back a little bit. Might not make it such a good video. We'll see at the end. But yeah, I'm going to take that out and bring it back down. So the reason that sometimes you might need a locking tool is you can see that little notch right there in the bottom right of the screen. That's basically called the keyway. So that's locking the actual crank to the balancer. And in some cases cars don't have that. And they might use like a diamond crush washer on the face, and when you put the bolt in, it basically holds and locks it all together. So in a case where it didn't have a keyway and you took the bolt out, that crank is now able to free spin, which you do not want. So the fact that this one has a keyway, it's quite nice and easy, and makes life a lot more simple for us. So now we've got the timing cover off, guys. So now it's showed as the timing components. We have the cam pulley right here. This is the cam sensor, and this cam sensor is picking up off these parts of metal right here. There's obviously 3, all different space. There's obviously 2 notches here, like a synchronizing notch, and that's basically this cam sensor is reading those notches to tell the engine computer in what position the cam is in. So We've also got down the bottom here that part in front of the crank pulley. I'll pull it off. This part right here is for retaining the belt. This one is pretty flat. Some of them are slightly dished, so you need to be careful which way you put it on. You want the dishing away from the belt so it doesn't cut into the belt. You can see that the belt has been rubbing on there, pretty clean on that side, so it will go on that way onto the engine. So yeah, don't forget to put that back on, otherwise the belt can ride off the crank pulley. So next step, we'll put the harmonic balancer bolt back into the crankshaft. We might need to put some washers to space it out, otherwise the bolt might bottom out, and I'll do that, and then we can start turning the engine over and set the cam timing. So just printed off the timing sheet, and you know, don't really ever read this stuff, to be honest. Probably should. The only things that I take notice of are like the deflection and the tightening torques of the bolts. So down here the interval is 100,000 Ks, 2 hours to replace it, and you can see there are no special tools to like lock the crank or anything that I was talking about before, and some of your tightening torques. We have another page here which shows us our timing marks and how to set the tensioner up on that. So I'll basically show you this. So we've got our balancer bolt back in there, so we can turn the engine over by hand now. So basically we'll put the socket on there and ratchet it over, and looks like this will be our timing mark on the back cover, and somewhere maybe this little dot should line up with that, and then the crank will either be lined up, or we might need to turn it over another rotation to get it all lined up. So okay, perfect. So I misspoke a little bit in the last one, my apologies there. When the cam is timed up, the crank will be timed up. If you time it off the crank and you turn it over, basically the crank is doing 2 turns to 1 turn, so the cam could be 180 degrees out. So if I turned that over 1 whole turn, this point here would end up being 180 down here, so you turn it another turn and it would put it back up here, part of the 4-stroke cycle. So you can see there that front mark is lining up and corresponding with the timing mark on the back of the timing cover. We go down the bottom here, you can see that little dot, and that's lining up with that mark also on the timing cover. So that's how you set your timing, and that's where the timing needs to be to put this engine back together properly. So the next step, now we can release the belt tension. It looks like it's spring tensioned on this thing. So right here, 14 mil, we'll loosen that off and push the tensioner back, and probably have to tighten it back up because the spring is pulling tension on it. And then once we've done that, well, in fact, actually I'm going to be changing the tensioner. I'm just going to wind that bolt all the way out. Just be careful that the cam doesn't turn. This, a lot of the times it's set up on the valve springs, so you may get turning. So yeah, that's where you don't want to go wrong on this job. So I'll take that off and I'll show you it. Okay, so I've got the tensioner off. It's not actually spring tension, it's just a pivot on an elongated hole, so it literally just goes like this. So we apply manual tension and lock the bolt up to set the tension, and then we need to measure belt deflection. So now, obviously the belt is loose. You take this belt off. If the cam does turn, it's not the end of the world. We can turn it back. Same with the crank. You know, there's always ways to fix things. So now we will basically just give this a bit of a clean up and install the new belt. So we've got that all cleaned up, guys, and We've got our tensioner sitting on there. The bolt is like all the way home, just not tight, sitting on its pivot obviously, otherwise it wouldn't be able to slide like that. So next step, now we're going to put the belt on, and the way that we're going to do that is sit it on the cam. Oh, there we go. So this one's actually got marks on it. You might find in some cases that your belt comes with marks. This is just to make sure that you're on the right spot. So this one's going to be for the cam. This one's going to be for the crank. So you basically put the belt on the cam, you pull it down hard tight, you put it around the crank, and then you put this should be all loose around the tensioner side. This needs to be all loose. If you have tension on this side and then you apply tension on the belt, it's going to twist this cam in or the crank down that way, and your timing's going to be out. We've got our timing set perfectly. It hasn't moved at all, and I've looked at that here and I've double checked that down the crank already. So I'm going to put the belt on and I will show you what I mean about having tension on this side of the belt. So we've got the new belt on, guys. Obviously that dot is lined up still. These lines are never perfect. They're always off by a tiny bit. Lines up with the back of the timing cover there. I already checked the other line underneath on the crank. Because it's obviously on the underside, we can't see it. You have to check it with a mirror. That's bang on as well. So the belt is like reasonably tight on this side in comparison to this side, extremely loose. It's extremely loose. You know, if we took it off the tensioner, it'd be flapping around. So that's exactly how you need to set this thing up. Sorry about that torch. Any timing belt, you need tension on one side. So we had it tight up the top, we pulled down, holding tension, using the ribs on the gear to keep tension on the belt, feed it around the crankshaft pulley, pulling it around and then pulling it hard up, making sure it's on all the teeth, and then it's loose and we can slip it over the tensioner. This is probably one of the easiest ones to do, but they're all the same. They're all set up exactly the same way. Well, not exactly the same way. I mean, as in like a practical side of things. It needs to be tight on this side. It needs to be loose on this side. If you don't do it that way, it's not going to be right. So now we will put a lever bar on the tensioner there and apply some tension and lock the bolt up, and then we will put the crank bolt back in, turn the engine over a couple of cycles, check our marks again. If they're bang on, which they will be, well, you can start reassembly. So once it's been turned over a couple of times and set the timing back up, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to see it with the bolt in there. I had to remove it out for you guys last time. By the way, you're just going to have to take my word for it that that's lined up. And also on the camshaft here, once you turned it over, the lines will not line up again, you know, for potentially hundreds and hundreds of turns, so don't worry about that. All we care about now is the dots and the marks. So we've just got this at work, and basically just to help show customers and help educate them what basically a timing belt is and what may happen if it was to break. But I'm just want to try and show you guys a different setup, but like I said, the same thing. So we've got a cam, got an idler, got a water pump, crank, and a tensioner. This is a hydraulic tensioner, and the tension on the belt happens like this, and the piston pushes up and holds the tension. So in the same scenario, you would want to put it on here, pull it tight, hold it tight, pull it tight around there, on the water pump, on the crank, and then finally slot it back over this. And then on this one you have a pin, release the pin, and it's auto tension. Mark here, would line up with that. Mark here, well, it's obviously not timed, would line up with that. You would turn it over a couple of times and make sure it's all married up. In the case of a broken timing belt, where this comes off, camshaft would stop spinning, crankshaft would continue spinning, and all the valves which are being timed by this belt, hence the name timing belt, would no longer be timed, and as the piston comes up, some of the valves are still open, and basically they meet and become absolutely destroyed, and then you need to basically pull the head off, and that's thousands of dollars worth of labor and parts, and not ideal. So for the sake of, depending on your car, it's somewhere between $500 and $1,000 to change your timing belt out and all your pulleys and all that. Whenever it's advised, just go ahead and get it done. So enjoy, guys. So there you have it, guys. I was running out of breath doing that thing, and it's been a bit of a rush trying to get this done sort of before the end of the day, at least this video at least. This job doesn't have to go out until tomorrow. It's now 4:15, so it took me pretty much exactly 1 hour to do this. Obviously our timer was saying 2 hours. Still got to put timing covers on and the belts, but not really that much big of a deal. Yeah, so I hope this helps you out. Like I say, this is applicable to pretty much every car. This method, not the way the timing belt is set up or the timing marks, just the method of how to install the belt correctly and check your marks. That's what I'm trying to teach you here. So if you learned anything from this or it helped you out, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It would really help us out, and catch you at the next one.